All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er update. 49ers back on the practice field on Monday. They are off on Tuesday, and then they'll be back in the regular schedule, back on the practice field Wednesday and Thursday, getting ready for a trip to Jacksonville coming out of the bye. And this update also brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. I love Mojo Fantasy. Check that link in the description. Make sure you use the promo code Krug, Krueg, and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. And everybody who does it automatically is entered into a drawing to win a Nick Bosa or a Brock Purdy jersey, which will be awarded on Thanksgiving night in the postgame show after Niners Hawks. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Niners back on the practice field on Monday. And according to reports, the Niners are reportedly signing offensive lineman Henry Bird to their practice squad. Henry Bird is an offensive lineman who worked out, 49ers worked out the Princeton product. He played at Princeton ahead of this year's draft. He's 6'5", 312 pounds. He was first team All Ivy League, final two college seasons there at Princeton, and was named to the All ECAC squad in 2022. He played in 39 games over 4 collegiate seasons. He didn't play in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the Niners add an offensive lineman. And they're at this point, I think you're always looking for good players. You're always looking for players that you think you can develop. This most likely not a player that they're going to put on the field right away, but more of a developmental player. Now, the 49ers also worked out a number of players: Isaac Alarcon, Lorenzo Burns, Henry Bird, who they did sign, Jacoby Francis, Sebastian Gutierrez, um, uh, Kamen Hall, I should say, Bobby Hart, Dontae Johnson, Cedric Ogbuehi, and Rezjohn Wright. So the two names on that list that are really interesting to me, one is Dontae Johnson. Dontae Johnson has been a 49er at one point or another going back to the Candlestick era. And Dontae Johnson's a very interesting player in that he's been a real stalwart, a guy who can play basically every position in the secondary. This guy played college football at NC State and is a Pennington, New Jersey guy who has been, if you look at his career, I mean, he was a 49er in 2014, played 16 games in 2014. 2015, he played 16 games. 2016, he played 15 games. 2017, he played 16 games. And then 7 games in 2019. Did not play for the Niners in 2018. 2020, he played 14 games. 2021, he played 16 games. And at different points last year, he was with the team as well on the practice squad. And he's just a guy that the 49ers really, really like. And he can play every spot in the secondary. He's big enough to play safety, but he's also lean enough to play corner. And he's a guy that it seems like they lean on quite often when they're looking for depth as the season goes on. And he's a kind of a reliable player, a 6'2", 190, very smart guy. He was the Niners one of the Niners draft choices, and just a really solid guy. And they always seem like they go back to Dontae Johnson at some point or another along the way. And so Plainfield, New Jersey native, grew up in New Jersey, went to South Plainfield High School, and then transferred to the Pennington School, was New Jersey All-Prep first team way back when. Now you're talking about a guy who's 31 years old, so he's not ancient. He's also played with the Seahawks, the Bills, the Cardinals, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. And it's funny because the 49ers drafted him in the 4th round in 2014. And you could argue that he's never truly established himself as any kind of a star, any kind of a significant player, but he's just versatile enough and just smart enough and just athletic enough to always be intriguing. 6'2" and an eighth, 200 pounds. He ran well coming out of college, 4.45 with a 1.57 10-yard split, 38 and a half inch vertical. So great lower body explosion, 12 reps on the bench. So he was always a guy who, you know, there was a reason to like him along the way. And he's one of those guys that's kept himself in shape and stays active. And he's a guy who really is an interesting player in that he's versatile and smart, and he can play every spot in the secondary. And you're sitting there and you're like, okay, every single time there comes to, late in the year where you need a player, it seems like Dontae Johnson gets the call. So I thought that was one of the interesting names on the list is Dontae Johnson, just because it seems like every year Dontae Johnson gets a look. The other interesting name on the list is Rezjohn Wright. Rezjohn Wright is a Bay Area kid, East Palo Alto kid. And 6'2", 193-pound corner, played at Oregon State. And he's the brother of Nashawn Wright, who played also at Oregon State and with the Dallas Cowboys. And if you remember Last Chance U with Beam at Laney College, Rezjohn began his career there at Laney College. And he's a local kid, as I said, James Logan High School in the Bay Area. He was one of the top junior college cornerbacks in the country, signed on to play at Oregon State in 2020. And played really well at Oregon State. I really like this player at Oregon State. And he's just a scheme versatile outside cornerback, and he's got talent and he's got skill. He's kind of a borderline NFL physical from a physical traits, speed, and that kind of thing, but he's got great size. He's got the physical traits to contest throws. He's got good footwork, good anticipation, aggressive football player, very great agility. I loved him at Oregon State. He can mirror receivers up and down the field. Needs to play with more awareness in zone overall. But you're talking about a premium sized corner with length, and a guy who has got quick acceleration, good change of direction, good recovery speed. It's like this is a guy who really has been a pretty good player. Now, a lot of the times you're talking about a young player who's still learning his craft. And he's had some inconsistencies in his coverage. He's had some penalties. You talk about going back to college, he had a bunch of penalties, but he'll sometimes grab when he doesn't need to grab. He'll sometimes take some bad angles. But I really like Rezjohn Wright, and that's an interesting name that they worked him out. I don't know if ultimately they'll sign him, but man, corner depth is always at a premium, and you always got to take a look at who's out there and what they potentially can do. So I really like this player quite a bit. He was a guy who really was a very good player at Oregon State. And it's funny. You think of, if you watch Last Chance U, that's where he got his start at Laney College, playing for Beam at the JUCO level, and he played there alongside his brother in 2018 and again in 2019. And so he's a guy who's played the boundary, and you're talking about a long frame. He's got great length, real twitchy athlete. It's he's an interesting player. He's got that long track explosiveness. He can cover a lot of ground out of his breaks and close the gap. Good fluidity for his size, outstanding route awareness. You're talking about a guy who, he doesn't have elite long speed. So if you're a burner, you can get by him. And, he's one of those guys that he probably grabs and tugs a little bit too much for the NFL game. He needs to work on just, trusting his speed, trusting his athleticism. But, interesting prospect for sure. I mean, a cornerback that has length, functional mobility, knows how to play the position. He's really aggressive in run support, really physical at the catch point, very competitive. So, interesting. I mean, I don't know if they're going to wind up signing him or not. Or I don't know if they'll wind up signing Dontae Johnson. But to me, both of those guys have a lot of interesting characteristics. And as the season plays out, the one thing about corner is you can't fake corner. So the Niners like bigger corners. Dontae Johnson's the veteran. Rezjohn Wright is still a young ascending player, but both of those are very interesting names who worked out for the 49ers on Monday. All right, thanks to Pagan and Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show, and thanks to Mojo Fantasy for being our sponsor of this video. Once again, check the link in the description and make sure to use that promo code Krug, KRUEG, and get up to $100 matched on your first deposit and automatically enter into a chance to win a Bosa or a Purdy jersey on Thanksgiving night. And thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.